All right, welcome everyone to Jane's office hours for September. I'm Kendell Hagensen. I am a somatic psychotherapist and a multidisciplinary clinic owner. I'm also a business coach. And most importantly, I'm a Jane ambassador. So Katie, we actually have two awesome guests today and co-hosts. Katie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Katie Bell. I live in the UK, as you can probably tell by my accent. And I am also a multidisciplinary clinic owner. I'm also a business coach in the UK, and I'm a Jane ambassador as well.
Wonderful. I'm excited to meet you. This is the first time we're meeting and excited to chat with you today. And we're lucky to have one of the co-founders of Jane, Allie, here today. Welcome, Allie.
Thanks, Kendall. Hi, everyone. I am co-founder of Jane, but actually Jane started at my multidisciplinary clinic. So also previously a clinic owner, which I just transitioned a year ago to the current practitioner is taking over. So I no longer am running that, which is lovely for me. But it was part of the story. So excited to chat more about that. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, it's been so fun. So today we're all excited. We're talking about making the move from solo practice to a multidisciplinary practice and a multidisciplinary team, which I have a very strong passion for, and the two of you have a strong passion for. So let's jump in. I'd love to start with when and why both of you decided to go from solo practice to the multidisciplinary team, multidisciplinary clinics. This is the question I get asked most often by clients is when is the right time to do this? Because a lot of people watching today and a lot of providers out there want to expand their teams to different modalities and different disciplines. And the first question I always ask my clients is why? Why do you want to do this, right? If you are a successful solo provider or you have a team in your own modality, what's the catalyst for you to expand? And why is it so important to you? So Katie, I'd love if we could start with you. What was that first decision point for you?
So I think there was the first decision point was I was clinically working 6 days a week, as we have all done and been there. And I was probably on the verge of burnout, but just doing the do and trying to run the clinic and be everything to everybody. And I absolutely loved everything about it, but I felt like my impact was, despite working incredibly hard, my impact was still quite small. I couldn't reach the number of people that I wanted to reach. I couldn't offer anything more because I just couldn't work any harder. And also running a business when you're the only person in it, unless it's fully aligned with what you want to create and how you want that business to run for your lifestyle, it can feel like you're doing a lot of work but not getting a lot of reward. And so I kind of felt a few things. I wasn't fulfilled because I thought I'd always wanted to have a team. I'd always wanted to have a big clinic. That was always part of my dream and my vision. I was really tired. I needed to get support and help because I recognized quite quickly I wasn't the person to do all of the different parts of the running of the clinic. And yeah, I just knew that I could make a bigger impact. So for me, it was an obvious choice. I had to get a team to be able to do that.
Allie, what about you? Did you start as a multidisciplinary team or did you start as a solo provider?
Yeah, at Canopy, we started multidisciplinary, partially because the space I found that I was building out had 8 treatment rooms, and my business plan involved all of them being used. And so being multidisciplinary was part of just filling the space with as many different types of providers as I could. And then also because my initial client, like the initial people I had to work at the clinic I was pregnant with my third. I had my third child while I opened the practice at the same time. So he'd come to work with me. And part of the providers that were coming to that clinic were the midwives. They were looking for some office space. So I had the midwives that were delivering my baby. I did not deliver at the clinic. I delivered at the hospital. I didn't deliver and then immediately keep working. Although it feels kind of like that. Like that's like the Beyonce song, "The Girls Run the World." You should listen. Everyone should go listen to that song. It's amazing. Anyway, And then I also had physios that I'd worked with previously that were looking for a different style. So I knew I already had a few, and I had some massage therapists are always, I like having massage therapists because a lot of different types of providers, it's acute care, but massage therapy people will come in for sort of more, when they don't have an acute problem, they'll come in for relaxation. And so sometimes your massage therapist can help bring new clientele in that will then learn your other services. I think we'll probably get to why multidisciplinary is such a magical thing later, but I already had multiple disciplines that were going to work at the practice when I started opening it, and then I had to fill the space. So multidisciplinary was sort of part of the very start of the clinic.
Katie, what were you talked about definitely wanting community and for your own sanity too, right? Moving into this different space. What were those key indicators kind of business wise that you felt like this is a good choice, or this is worth the financial risk of it?
So the revenue that we were generating, the profit we were making with just me being a solo preneur. And obviously I knew that there was going to be a big increase in costs, but I could see that by increasing costs, I was going to generate more revenue. I was ultimately going to make more profit. So the numbers were telling me it was going to work. The number of inquiries we were receiving, there was too many for me to manage by myself. So I knew the marketing was working. So I knew that I would be able to fill other people's diaries if they came to work with me. So yeah, I guess it was inquiries, marketing working, how I felt as well. I was like ready for more, and then revenue and profit.
Yeah, that piece is really important because I think a lot of people maybe watching they've had this dream for a while, or they feel like, oh, I want to try something different, or I see other people doing this. When is it time for me to do it? And so it's weighing the risk of it. But it's also really important to have such clarity on the why and the intention behind it. And like Ali was saying, the magic of multidisciplinary, right? It's amazing and beautiful, and people can get better way faster and stay really well and healthy. But if you're at a place in your practice where you're not getting a lot of referrals and your numbers are not there as a solo provider or as a small group practice, right? It might not be time to make that huge leap. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would really agree. I think you've got to have the foundations in place, because I always say bigger is not always better. And that, bigger can be amazing, as we've just talked about and you just mentioned, but it can also become a monster if you haven't got those key foundations in place, such as your growth plan, your marketing strategy, your sales strategy, operations, and then also stepping into becoming a great leader, because as a solopreneur you're managing yourself, and then having to bring team in and then lead that, those team members, that requires a whole different skill set that you might not have learned, you might not have been taught, but it's being committed to developing that area as well.
Mm-hmm. Ali, what were some of those initial hurdles you faced besides having an infant at your clinic when you were first starting? I mean, we have that in common where we both started out with a multidisciplinary team from the jump. But my team started as 6 people, so we still had those growing pains and expansion pains. What were those initial hurdles for you as you were starting?
I think the first thing that I had to figure out that I didn't know, I mean, everything's always a learning, right? You're doing things you've never done before. You always have to figure things out and learn, was how all the different disciplines were compensated, because it's different. So if you're used to working in one discipline, if you are a practitioner in one discipline, you know how that works in your industry, you know what's normal, you know what's good, you know the different ways people are compensated. But it's different with different disciplines. So really trying to figure out, how are people paid across different disciplines? Can I do a consistent pay schedule across everybody? Or is that never going to work? Because I won't get certain disciplines under that fee schedule or that pay schedule or that compensation style. So the first thing was, I interviewed a lot of different disciplines that I'd never worked with before. Like I'd never worked with an osteo. or I had like an art therapist that was working at the practice. And so you're kind of just saying, so it was super fun because you get to sit down with people and say, tell me all about, why did you choose to be an osteo? Tell me your story. Tell me about why you got into this. Tell me about why you love this discipline. And then you can kind of get into the business side of how do those clinics run? And it's incredibly fun. You learn so many things. But then you do have to come up with a system, because people do compare. So you need to make sure that whatever you do on the compensation side is something that you can defend across all of your practitioners. So you have to have a very clear understanding of why you compensate the way you do. And then that it's competitive in the market and then defensible across your whole team. So I'm sure, Katie and Kendell, you've experienced this. It's a tricky one because there are differences. But I think that was probably the first hurdle to overcome. And in the end, I had two different. I had, because here in BC, and it's going to be different everywhere based on where you are, but I had one compensation kind of model for massage therapists and one for everybody else, just because of the way that they were compensated in the market.
What about you, Katie? What were those those initial hurdles, and then maybe speaking specifically to this compensation structure across the different modalities? This is a hot topic for sure.
Yeah, so I guess some of the initial hurdles were going from a physio-led clinic, which is me, that did Pilates. I was a Pilates instructor and I did physio. So a kind of fairly easy thing to market, like very specific. And then all of a sudden I got all these other modalities, like multidisciplinary people coming in, and I was thinking, how on earth am I going to market everybody? And so it was getting my head round quickly marketing in a multidisciplinary clinic, and not trying to put all the eggs in one basket and try and market everything all at once. So I needed a different strategy. I needed a different sort of plan. So that was a hurdle definitely at the beginning that I didn't anticipate, because I didn't know until I was doing it. And then in the UK, from a compensation point of view, I quickly recognized that I would be much better if I employed people, rather than have what we have in the UK is freelance or associates. So they might be paid on a commission or like a fee structure. And it's a fairly old model that has existed. Maybe you guys have the same, I'm not sure, but it has existed for a long time. It was sort of, I think, something that was just established years and years ago, and everybody who came in and worked for you just got 50% or 60% of everything that the patient paid. And when you actually, maybe 20 years ago, when the cost of delivery was a lot lower than it is now, that structure may have worked. But what we've seen definitely in our industry over the last sort of since COVID, and all of our bills and everything, the cost of delivery has absolutely scaled. Giving away 50 or 60% of your gross revenue is going to not leave you with enough in the bottom line. So I picked this up really quickly when I was running my numbers, because I was clear on my numbers. And that's, I think something that as you get bigger, you have to be so on. It was showing me that I needed to employ people. I needed to take the risk as such and bring people in on an employed rate, because that was more cost effective. We were going to be more profitable and therefore more sustainable. So I think those were the main hurdles that I kind of had to overcome quite quickly.
Katie, what disciplines do you have now in your practice?
We have physios, we have women's health specialists, we have a manual lymphatic drainage therapist, we have a team of 13 Pilates instructors, we have yoga, we have people who run a diagnostic ultrasound, so it's a sonographer, and we have acupuncturists, massage therapists, therapeutic and sports, so both. And I've probably forgotten something else that I can't remember, but we've got lots of different ones.
Yeah. So when you think about all those things, right, people are watching going, well, how do you market that? And you were talking about how difficult that is. And it can feel like, oh, I'm marketing multiple businesses at once. And we started to learn early on, we have to market what we do differently. We have to market us as a whole and our brand, right? And yes, we have all these services and we have all these modalities, and come try this because of this, and this is what it solves for you. But what do we solve for you as a company, no matter what service we might be offering or what modality we might be offering in any given year. Because that, I think both of you could probably attest to, right? That changes over time if you have a multidisciplinary team.
Yeah, and you've got, you know, at certain points of the year, you're going to be pushing certain services based on what your growth plan is. So yeah, that's really important to differentiate yourself from the pack, because there's lots of physios on the road that I have my clinic on in you know, in the UK. So what makes you different?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I go off script and ask both of you a question, because I'm actually really curious about the answer to this. When you're looking at adding another practitioner to your practice, or how do you decide between adding another of the same discipline? If there's like, they're fully booked, we know we could put in another practitioner of the same discipline, or one of a new discipline, so that there's more like, there's a more broader care base, or so that people can refer to one another? Or is that a decision you're even making at that time when you're like, okay, I would like to add another practitioner. I have space, I have a room. Who should I try to fill it with?
Yeah.
They have no one has any prep for this, by the way. I just totally went off script.
It's a good one.
Sorry it's
a good one, and it's an important one, because when you're doing, like when we first started, my vision was, well, we need to have these different disciplines in combination, because this has been my experience of what works and what helps get people well and staying well. And this is what I can see really working for our community. But that was just an idea, right? So once we're in the community actually practicing, then it's learning, well, mental health counseling is our most popular service, most profitable service. Sure. Could that be because I'm a mental health counselor and I started the company, right? And that's what I know best. And then, okay, this modality over here is not doing so well. So what do we need to do? Do we want to invest more in it and grow that side of the business? Or do we want to bring in more therapists? And that has changed over the years, depending on what's going on around us. So like in the depths of the pandemic, we had to step back and make the smartest choice we could for everyone's sake in the company, like all of us did, and said, well, we can't practice in person. Everyone needs mental health services right now. Let's hire more therapists, right? Yeah. And then there's been times over the years where we have an open room and we are looking at profitability, but we're also looking at what's the balance of the team and what are our patients asking for. So there's a point where, you know, after several patients a week are asking for, well, when are you all, are you ever going to bring Reiki to your company? Are you ever going to bring energy medicine services? Or are you, you know, when are you bringing back your IVs? I've been wanting to come back for those. So it's listening to the customers. And we also survey our patients and clients and see what they're wanting.
Yeah, I think I would just agree with all of that, Kendell. And I think, Ali, for you, this is about looking at what your strategic growth plan is. Like, you know, that dictates quite a lot of the decisions that you would make in your clinic. And I always think about going for the lowest hanging fruit. So if you've got a lot, if you are fully booked and you've got people asking for that service, that would be the easier way to get to my goal than bringing in another discipline that requires a different set of marketing, a different fee structure, a different set of policies and ways of doing things, and all of those kind of things that come with bringing somebody else in. But it's not to say you can't do that. It just, for me, I like to get to where I need to be in the simplest possible way.
Yeah. Thanks. I think it's a challenge for people to know, especially if they're trying to go multidisciplinary, because they have to decide, well, do I just keep putting in more of the same, or do I try something new that I don't know? I'm gonna have to build up a new caseload or bring in someone different, and how do I decide which one to do? So that's helpful, I think.
Yeah, and it's about being intentional about, sorry, what was that?
Am I just apologizing for going rogue? It's a problem.
Okay.
No apology needed. I think, you know, just being so intentional. A lot of solo providers, I work with a lot of mental health counselors who want to add disciplines, and they'll end up adding massage first or other types of modalities will also end up adding massage first, because it is a service that's easy to market, and people know what it is. They know why a massage might be beneficial to them. They've done it before, right? So it's thinking about, well, does massage therapy fit with what you're currently offering, and why, and how would you market it, right? And then, okay, what's the next one? What also fits in here? And I could argue any discipline fits with any discipline, but it's about getting clear on who you're actually serving in your community, right? Like you can put, obviously, mental health counseling with nutrition services. Well, that fits really well in a lot of different ways. Are you working with eating disorders? And is your nutritionist also specialized in eating disorders, right? Those things go together. We have lots of, a few questions coming in, popping up here. Maybe we want to start addressing those, so we have some time. Let's see, from Heather, here in BC, I have not heard of the employee version versus the subcontractor version. I think we run the risk of them striking out on their own if the employee only version is offered to them. So I think go ahead, Ali. Yeah.
Oh, it depends on your discipline, Heather. I'm going to assume you might be a mental health practitioner, because I think contractor is most common in mental health, but maybe you're not. But in other disciplines, it's common to have both contractor and employee. And even under an employee model, you can still pay a % base pay. It doesn't have, or you can pay hourly. Excuse me. And then I think the risk is all in how you word your contract. Who owns the caseload it's a difficult question in healthcare, because it's actually it's patient choice always. So I think you can put whatever you want in the contract, but realistically it's patient choice, and you should always prioritize continuity of care of your patients, and you should always put your patients first. And so I think there's some practices that get very concerned about the ownership of patients, but in my experience, being generous with that and generous with your practitioners and being like really prioritizing the patient having the best experience and giving them choice. You can stay with our practice and go see someone else, but here's where your practitioner went if you want to continue with them. You always end up long run better, because often I'll have practitioners boomerang back to me because they've left on a positive experience, and then they might want to come back and work practice at the clinic again. But if you fight and are closed, I think it burns you. So I'm going to say the fear-based approach tends to, I think, hurt your business more than just generally focusing on everyone succeeding. That's my experience.
For sure.
I don't know if you had anything to.
Oh yeah, I mean, we can do a whole session just on that, because this gets very tricky, and every clinic owner experiences this. But I agree with Ali. Lead with abundance mindset, and you'll be in a good spot. Mercedes wants to know, what is a full therapist for you? This varies across all disciplines, and in our field of alternative medicine, I have found we certainly have people who work full time, but a lot of people work part-time in our type of profession. So when we think about mental health counselors, it also depends on the environment you're creating. So most wellness centers that we see are different from the pace of like a hospital or an inpatient or community health clinic. So for ours personally at Vancouver Wellness Studio, a full-time mental health therapist would need to see at least 25 clients a week. Now, people listening might go, oh, shouldn't they see 40? Nope, that's how it works in our field. Our massage therapists, they might go down, work at a place down the street, and they're seeing 8, 9 patients a day. That's not how we do it. They see maybe 4 to 5 patients a day, 4 days a week. And that's kind of full time for us. I don't know, Katie, if you have a different approach.
Yeah, exactly the same, depending on what discipline you do, how you work, how you structure your business. We look for, so I don't know whether Mercedes, this question came from Ali saying, I've got a full therapist, so they're clinically fully booked, so it's the right thing to take somebody else on. What we look at is occupancy, so we track occupancy per practitioner. So when we are consistently seeing an occupancy of 85% or above, that would suggest that you've got opportunity for growth, you know, for somebody else to come in, because it's very difficult to say somebody will be 100% full 100% of the time. So it's never going to be that. And we take out all of their admin breaks or the times that they're not clinical, and we work it out 85% on that. And that's when we sort of know, from an availability point of view, we need to start thinking about recruiting again, especially when you're using Jane as a booking system. If clients land on Jane and there is no availability, they'll just go elsewhere. So if you're running the occupancy, you know, across your team, it's really important to, you know,
if you're a smaller practice, you just know, like, are people able to get in or not? Can you get new patients? Or
exactly.
is it fully booked with all of the returning patients for clients? So I think people just means there's not enough availability for new patients to come in. People are constantly, they're on a wait list, they're waiting for care. And a larger team, data is like, so you need data to help with an overview. But when people have small teams, I'm always like, just ask your admin staff. They know. Can you fill in? Okay, we need to find someone else. So your admin team are like your best data source ever if you are a smaller practice. Actually, even if you're a larger practice, I think they are so underutilized for, they'll tell you why someone's not getting rebooked. They'll tell you who the best therapists are. They'll tell you why they book certain people with certain people. They'll tell you who delights their patients and who is struggling to keep their patients happy. They'll tell you why. They know why. They're so attuned to what's happening in their practice.
Absolutely. Miranda wants to know, have you added a different discipline and then it did not succeed or grow like you planned? And how did you handle that situation? Miranda, so many times, oh, this has happened. And that was learning in the early years. I think back to, we added aesthetics, like holistic aesthetics, pretty early on in our company. And our team has been very healthcare focused: naturopathic medicine, mental health counseling, massage, acupuncture, nutrition. And we thought, well, holistic aesthetics works, it goes. Well, it wasn't the right time and it wasn't the right environment for it. And I think the biggest lesson in it is just not letting it go too far and being really intentional up front. Why are we adding this? Okay, let's get the marketing going beforehand. Let's make sure people really want it. If it's not working, we're just gonna let it go. Right? If it doesn't flow, let it go. And then years later, 2 years ago, we opened our second location, which is an integrative medicine approach to a spa. And here we have holistic aesthetics, and it's working beautifully. What are some examples you ladies have?
So we've had a few people come and go. I think we've had a nutritionist, we've had a mental health therapist, and I think what you're right, Kendell, is that I always think about, is this like a people problem? Is this a process problem? Is this, what is the problem here? And sometimes it's the wrong person in the right seat.
Yes.
And therefore they need to go. Whatever you do to that service, it is not going to get any better because you've got the wrong person in that seat. So that's one thing to really look at. Is that a people problem? Or is it that you haven't got the marketing right? So is it a messaging problem? That's what's falling short. Or it might be, for us, as the clinic owner, we had quite a lot of yoga in our practice years ago, and it just never got off the ground. And a massive part of it is I don't like yoga, and I'm the clinic owner, so I was like, I'm just not that bothered about pushing it because I'm really not into yoga at all, and I could not get behind it. And I just was like, why am I doing this? I do not want to do a downward dog ever in my life, so we're just going to get rid of yoga. So a part of it is like, if I'm not passionate about it, it's probably not going to get off the ground because I'm the one running the clinic. So I think there's a few of those things to think about as to why it might not have worked.
that made my day, honestly. I mean, I think you're either a Pilates person or a yoga person. I've seen that before. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Tori wants to know.
I
Oh,
just
sorry,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
add one story to that, in that I added a discipline early on and it was not like not filling up. And I was just like, oh, maybe this just isn't, it's just not a discipline that people are interested in. But then I had another person, that same discipline, want to join. And I was like, okay, well, let's give it a go. And that person was fully booked within a week. And so it really taught me something that actually I think I knew, is that practitioners, I feel pretty strongly that someone who's a great practitioner in one modality is going to be a great practitioner in any modality. I think people end up with stories in their lives that put them to a certain type of care, but they would be good no matter what. And if you have that type of person, they're going to be successful. So sometimes it's not the discipline that's a problem. It's like you were saying, Katie, the wrong person. So I was slow to add that discipline, like more people, because I thought it wasn't in demand, but that was a mistake. I should have recognized that it was the person, not the modality, that was the problem. And so I think the person is 100% more important than the type of practice they do, because really great practitioners fill their own schedule because they are good and their patients love them and they talk about them and they fill up. You don't actually have to push their service all that hard. And they're usually ones that are learning, they're excited, they're very passionate about what they're doing. And so I think it's more about usually the practitioner than it is about the modality. So just don't think you failed if you try someone and it doesn't work. It might be that is not the right person and you might need to try a couple times. And then sometimes, you just want to say, like, if this is totally out of left, like I'm going to put dog walkers or services that are completely unrelated. And the other thing is too, your practitioners can work as a team. So if they're really, if they build relationship within the other practitioners in the team, they can build their own caseloads internally too. So I think it's personality.
1000% agree with you. And which is why over the years, there's times where we might be really lopsided in one modality because those are the right people who came along. And if they meet those top values of the company and they have that personality to come in and be successful, then they're the people you want on your team. And I'll speak a little bit to the power of collaboration, which could, be its own talk as well. But Ali was speaking to the providers can work together to get to know each other and refer to each other. And if you're going to do a multidisciplinary practice, I just highly, highly encourage collaboration all the time. But if you're a multidisciplinary team, this is where the magic is. To actually meet and work together, review cases together, do case coordination on behalf of your shared patients, and get to know each other's services and be able to really support patients in that way of having them work with your teammate. So Tori wants to know, how do you guys handle scope of practice issues when hiring practitioners with higher licenses? Can you have an employee version with practitioner with higher license, or do they need to be independent contractor? I'm in the United States, in Washington State. We have something called corporate practice of medicine in the US. I don't know how that shows up in Canada or the UK. It basically was built for large healthcare organizations, but it trickles down to affect small companies, and essentially says you can't hire people as employees who are higher licenses than you. There are ways around that. And in our state, the way we go about that is by having at least a 5% physician owner in our clinic. And then we can hire any discipline we would like to.
Yeah, we have rules around, like if you're a physiotherapist in BC, you can't have a physiotherapist corporation unless you're a physio. So you can't own a physio corporation without being a practicing physio. So same with multidisciplinary, though, you can create a multidisciplinary practice without a single discipline. You just can't call it a physiotherapist corporation. So yeah, I agree with Kendell. There's always ways to get around the legality of the ownership of a practice. You just have to be aware of what they are and make sure you're not working contrary to them. So Canada, I think the same. Katie, are there rules around multidisciplinary or clinic ownership, or no, private practice? Anyone can own anything.
Yeah.
Oh,
Amazing.
easy.
The one great thing about the UK, I don't usually have anything to go, the UK is great, but maybe this is it.
That's amazing.
Anyone can own
Wonderful.
Yeah, anybody can own it.
Emma would love to know, I'm curious about the employee structure versus revenue split structure of a subcontractor, as well as how you have decided to structure your practices. I'm leaning towards employee to maintain a specific quality control. My personal opinion, and in my experience of having our clinic, I am not a fan of contractors. So in the US, we have W-2 employees and contractors. Contracting is very, very common, especially in mental health practices, and percentage fee splits are very common. I am personally totally against that model. I don't think it works, especially in a multidisciplinary team. If you have a specific vision and you want it to be your brand and your company, contracting is not the way to do that. And it also is technically illegal in our area and our state, and the US federally is kind of really cracking down on doing this. But the biggest reason for me is around the patient experience. So if you really want a cohesive patient experience, then employees are the way to do that. And there's different fee structures. So in our company, for most of our positions, we do what's called a pay per piece model. Providers are paid per clinical hour session that they provide. So whenever a client pays, the provider is paid. Differing opinions?
No, I agree with you. I have had both. I've still got both in my clinic, but we have more employed than we do. We call ours freelance therapists, but we are seeing a big clamp down on the law over here as well, that you need to be really careful how you treat these contractors or freelance. You cannot treat them like employed. And there is a fine line between that, which we are being looked at even, more and more now. So actually, when you go through a lot of the questions around how you treat this person, it often would stipulate that they really should be employed by you. And I think I would add as well, I don't know your employment law obviously in the States and in the US, but we have probationary periods for a reason. So don't feel like you can bring people in and then you're just stuck with them forever. You're not. You run a really tight probationary period. You have key metrics that you performance manage them on. You lead well, you manage well, and you fire quickly if they are not the right people for you. And I always think if you need to extend a probationary period, you need to get rid of them. Really, if your probationary period is 3 months and they're still not performing at that point, and you've done what you need to do as the employer, then they need to go. Don't extend, because they're not going to get any better. But you can still be in control as the employer. I think that's the thing that often puts people off, is that they think they're going to be stuck with this person and they can't get rid of them, and that's not the case.
Katie, do you pay Katie, do you pay your employees even when they don't have patients or clients?
Yeah.
So they're on just a full-time hourly wage that's like a salary, and they're paid whether they're seeing people or not. But then you have metrics of like, this is what you're expected to fill of your schedule or
we bring them in on a graded occupancy. So we will say, right, in the first month, I work out how much they're costing me, plus what they're costing the business in terms of, we have additional taxes and things to pay on, and pension and various things. So I know the total cost of that person. So the first metric they have to hit in month 1 is to pay for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I will know.
And then does salary scale? Like, does it scale up? Do they get bonuses? Like if they're fully booked, how do you motivate that in them without them feeling like they're not getting more the harder they work? So
they get paid a basic salary, and then some of them are on bonuses based on occupancy. Some might be based on various different metrics, because everybody's motivated in different ways. I generally find we have a company standard that we expect all of our practitioners to be working at 85% occupancy, and that's just how we do it here. You're not going to get paid more just because you're working at 90 or 95%. We pay fairly, we pay well, we treat well.
Yeah, you're taking the risk.
Yeah.
Because if they're working less than 85%, they're still getting paid. Yeah, there's a risk in business ownership.
Yeah, and but we also know that anything below maybe like a 40% occupancy is I'm going to be losing out. So my job is to have a really good marketing strategy in place that's going to get these people paying for themselves in month one, and then it builds over the months.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, so let's answer a couple more questions. From Heather, would you add another therapist before adding an admin person when you make the move from solo to multidisciplinary? If you're asking if you need an admin person, you probably need an admin person. I think most people wait too long before hiring admin because it's a cost that is not directly bringing in revenue, but you will be doing all the work yourself if you don't bring on an admin. Okay, let's see. How much do you help someone new that is struggling to fill their schedule, like a training period or trial? We are a very collaborative team. All of our processes are in collaboration. So we have a marketing coordinator who does like all the digital marketing and gets to know each new person. We teach our providers how to participate in really building a relationship with the community and with patients. And we train them on consultations, conversion to long-term care with clients, and client retention. And so we do a lot of that because we expect a lot from our providers and to be very collaborative in it. And there are people who come in with a really high clinical skill, but they've never been in an environment where they have to practice these skills of retention or things like that. So we give them an opportunity and train them in how to do that. Anything else to add there, ladies?
No.
Okay. Shay is panicking. Wait, did you say subcontracting in the US is not legal? Shay, don't panic. Their laws are changing. So look in your state, talk to a healthcare specific attorney. For mental health counseling in particular, this has been a problem for a very long time. But most states are complaint based. So a lot of group practices and clinics are not in compliance, and no one really cares because no one complains. So take a deep breath, talk to a healthcare attorney if you want to change how you're doing it.
I will say in BC, it's the same with contractors. Typically, the rule is they have to have more than one workplace. If you're a contractor, you can't have all your revenue from one stream. I think that's a pretty consistent definition of a contractor. So if you have people that are working only at your practice and nowhere else, it's going to be questionable if they should be a contractor or not. So that's kind of like the biggest top rule. And if they are contractors, you're not supposed to provide them with any business supplies, any services. They're supposed to pay for all of that themselves. They have to have their own business license. They're not supposed to be invited to Christmas parties or holiday parties in BC. Like that's one of the rules. They're not considered part of your organization, but no one, like Kendell says, many people do not operate that way. So just risk, you can decide on whether you want to take or not.
Yeah. Okay. We are out of time. There's a bunch more questions. You can always feel free. I won't speak for everyone on the call. You guys can decide if you want to invite people to email you, but you're welcome to email me at kendell@wellnesscentercreators.com with the rest of your questions. I'm happy to answer them. And this has been so fun. Katie and Allie, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next month for Jane's Office Hours.